What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. This is the 11th Island. I'm Brad. That's Chris over there. And this is the only UFC 263 recap that you will need. So, Chris, let's just get started, get into this. What was the fight that you want to talk about first? And let's hear your thoughts.
Well, I mean, what fight? What I want to talk about first. I mean, you had Israel Adesanya back in there doing a very traditional, what has become the standard for Israel Adesanya fight. Fireworks, drama, antics,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had Moreno, that huge upset. I mean, you got Nate
Mm-hmm.
Diaz with some fireworks after. I mean, that was a movie. That was a movie. Like that was the end of a movie. That fight, Nate Diaz. That was the culmination of an epic drama. And then you had
Yeah,
just
well, and it almost finished with the drama, too.
yeah,
And then even earlier on the main card, you had the horror show with Paul Craig breaking Jamal Hill's
yeah, you
arm.
had that. Which I mean is less. It's there's a lot to talk about, and but it's a different type of let's talk about this. It's not a I'm so happy this fight turned out the way this. It's more just like ooh, like there's a lot of who was that? I know there was some ref. It was like
Oh, yeah, that ref should never ref
yeah,
again.
they got Herman Trout from Breaking Bad showed up and just walked
But
off.
I think it's best if we start with the last fight of the night, probably
Yeah.
the one that most casuals would have tuned in for in this, with Israel Adesanya defeating Marvin Vettori to retain the middleweight championship with a 5-round, fairly dominant decision. I wouldn't say it was a wash. Vettori was competitive in the
Hmm.
fight. There was at no point during it where it looked like he had a chance to win, but he wasn't completely out of it.
Yeah.
He always had that puncher's chance, I guess.
Hmm.
But I mean, Adesanya toyed with him in the cage. Like
Yeah.
that at the end of the fourth round when he was grabbing him by the butt, where he was like in the fifth round where he was faking being hurt. Like Adesanya, it was nice to see after the Yawn fight where he didn't get skittish. He wasn't afraid. He
Oh
kind of
yeah, it was nice to
stayed true
see.
to himself.
I loved seeing that. That was nice to see. That's what you
No,
you.
but no, but for the sport is better with Israel Adesanya
Yeah,
performing at the better
and
at his
I
level.
mean, it was a classic Adesanya performance. You said after the fight, I mean, this is the most comfortable Adesanya has felt in his own skin talking on the mic. You know, he's really dropped
Yeah,
that.
that promo was solid.
Yeah,
And
so
I'm not a big Adesanya guy, but the
yeah,
promo that was, if you look at normal promos for him, they're all really awkward. He kind of does that
hmm,
like awkward laugh. This one, it was almost choreographed the
yeah,
way some of
yeah,
the things that he said. Which even if that's what you got to do to
yeah,
sound proper and get it across, go ahead.
yeah, and I was thinking because like we're the ass grab, right? That was this is the Adesanya fighting. Okay, we're not talking about how he was in the clinch. We're not talking about any moves, any his leg work. We're talking about antics. That's
Hmm.
where and to say Marvin Vettori has no respect. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something to do with respect for the sport. And
Well,
I
I think afterwards they said after the fight, I think Adesanya and Vittori they made it clear that they don't like each other. They're not going to like each other, but they respect each other. So I think the respect
oh
is there.
was that
I mean, but yeah, no, so it wasn't saying he doesn't respect the sport. The
oh
respect between the
I
two and what
that's
they
how
can
I
do in the cage is there.
That's what.
Yeah, you weren't
Okay, I took it.
listening properly.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, I was tired. It was late. 3 5-round fights. You want me to hang on to every word? But
Well, if you're not some
you.
sort of casual, that's what I
Well,
expect. I
I
expect
mean,
you to show up to work and listen to it so we can talk proper on the
well,
podcast.
what I would say is there's a bunch of people that are crying right now. They're hurting. Okay, there are people that are
Are you
getting
talking
kicked.
about the Italians?
No, no, I'm not. Well, those people too. But I'm talking about people. So there are people that are not in their house right now, no longer own their house because Adesanya was not able to choke out Vittori over that Dogecoin advertisement.
Yeah, that was one where You
See,
got in the middle of the fight, Chris starts just yapping about, oh, the Dogecoin would have changed people's lives if that happened right there. And it was Vittori that had Adesanya in the chokehold, I think, right?
yeah. Oh,
And
so,
you were
yeah, yeah.
just
It was.
losing. Yeah,
It was.
you
Yeah,
were
yeah.
losing your mind about
Vittori
it.
chokes out Adesanya. How crazy is that, dude? How nuts is that? That's a
Yeah, you've been
cultural
like it would
moment.
have been it would have been fixed. It would have been
Yeah,
fixed.
no, it would, dude. You can't stage that, like you can't, like you can't say that's random chance. The fight before or 2 fights before, Nate Diaz just all of a sudden has nearly a movie finish in a fight that he's getting destroyed in. No discredit to Nate Diaz. Like all of a sudden that just comes out of nowhere with 1 minute left. And then you got Moreno. I'm not trying to discredit anybody or
I
disrespect
mean, a
anybody.
week
I'm just
ago
saying
you were just all on Moreno. You were talking all about him,
no,
how
no, 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 no,
excited
no.
you were for him to
Yeah, yeah,
fight.
but
You were rooting for him, how good he was, and now
I'm
you're gonna
saying
sit there and say the
I'm
fix
saying
is in.
I'm you, you you couldn't write what happened last night. That's what I was trying to articulate. I was saying this is everything that's happened is perfect. Is perfect. That was everything Dana White wanted to happen. Happened last night.
You're thinking too hard. You're thinking too hard. It was just, it
No,
was
I
an
don't know,
outstanding
and
fight
it's.
card.
I'm
It
not
was an
saying.
outstanding fight card.
I'm
There
not
was
saying anything
nothing
was fixed.
that I said.
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor. It's not.
Okay,
It's not
okay.
even a metaphor. I'm just.
Yeah, I don't know where we're going with this, but bottom line, Adesanya, how do you think he performed against somebody who the question was, can he take him down and hold him there like Jan? I thought he did a good job, but when he did get taken down, to the first couple takedowns, it kind of looked like he was drowning, but then he was able to get up decently quick, not stay down, and then stay back on his feet, which was a good
He
thing
was.
for
I mean,
Adesanya's camp to see.
in those early rounds, he was down just long enough for you to say, "Wow, he looks uncomfortable on the ground," and not a second more. It was long
Mhm,
enough to notice that he's not. He's nowhere close to being in his element on the ground. But he's not going to be
mhm.
kept there for long, and to do that
Yeah,
against a guy like Vittori, that was very impressive. I thought that
and I
first
think for
round,
somebody like with this Adesanya too, with the striking level that he has too, as long as like his ground game doesn't ever have to be that good, as
mhm,
long as you can't keep him down
yeah,
and he can get up, right?
yeah,
Or you can't get him down. That's all you need.
yeah, yeah. It's he's got such a good offense. Just a
Hmm.
little bit of defense can go a lot of ways when you're facing a
Hmm.
guy like Vittori, who's, I mean, if he's going to beat
Hmm.
you, it's going to be on the ground.
I agree. So I think we're gonna agree on what's next for Adesanya. So I think we can save that for in a bit here. But Vittori, what's next for Vittori? Because I think there's only one option for what's next for Vittori.
What is it? Because I riddle me that,
Darren Till.
Damn. Yeah,
Because
it's.
correct me if I'm wrong, but that was a fight that was supposed to be made,
Mhm.
and Darren Till had to pull out, so Kevin Holland came in. Vittori beat him, and that propelled him to the title shot, right? So
Yeah,
it's a fight that we've already been promised,
yeah,
and it's a fight that you have two guys coming off of a loss
yeah,
that are still very much in that top five, kind of maybe not right on the cusp of title picture,
yeah.
but can get there. So I think that fight makes a lot of sense.
It makes sense in two ways, right? One, there's a clear path out of that for each guy, pending a win. There's something to
Yes.
do. There's also, I mean, or three things. Two, I mean, as we've seen, Vittori is now. There's kind of a cult status. I think the war with Adesanya, the mental war with Adesanya, was one of the.
Hmm.
It was one of the bigger beefs of the last little bit. The one that really, like, there was a lot of back and forth, and they did a good job of putting these guys together as much as possible in virtual settings and all that. There was a lot of
Yeah.
back and forth dialogue, and I think Vittori is. I don't know if he's respected. And I hate to say that about anybody, but
Hmm.
he's loved. You know,
And even if it's not, people love him because they like him as a fighter. People can, I mean, if you follow any like on Reddit or Instagram or
yeah,
anything, the MMA meme accounts, they love him because they can just make fun of him the
Yeah.
entire time, calling him
So
an orc.
yeah.
And it's you got to find, like, at that point, even if it's not being loved for who you are as a fighter, just love
Yeah.
because people think you're
Yeah.
ugly. I
And
mean,
and
whatever keeps you in the
and,
picture.
and then I think they I feel like Vittori is the type of guy who plays into it. You know,
Mhm.
he embraces it, which is
And he
all you
keeps
can
shaving his
do.
head.
Shaving his head. I
Mhm.
mean, the shorts backwards thing. I mean, you play into that. You you
Oh yeah, I
have
didn't know if
to.
you saw that too.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
who
backwards
in the hell
shorts.
let him do that?
I mean, at that point, the meme was rising, and they said, "Let's just kick it into fifth gear," and that's
Yeah.
what you got to do if you're a guy like Marvin Vittori, who's he's
Mhm.
sniffing it, but
Mhm.
with Adesanya in the way, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do to make yourself interesting and make those fights with a guy like Darren Till, where it's like, yeah, there's a path to the title, but it's also, I mean, with Adesanya being so good and Adesanya having already run through these guys, this is kind of this is it stands on it has to stand alone as well. And a
Yeah.
guy like Vittoria, a guy like Till, they have, I mean, Till has the name. Vittori has somewhat had the name, but now really has the name to say, okay, there's something here just within the space of this octagon in the time of this fight.
Yeah.
With the added caveat that who knows what happens with Whitaker? Who knows what happens when Adesanya? I mean, that's a fight
I
Adesanya
mean,
could lose.
we're skipping ahead of ourselves here because I was about to ask you who's Adesanya face next, and you've already played your hand, and I
I've
agree with you.
I've
I
already
think the fight is.
honestly, it's such a lock in both of our brains, and we've talked about it so much that when you said we're
Mhm.
gonna just move it on, I was like, okay, we'll talk about this later. But then when I brought it up, I was like, yeah, we already mentioned it. Goes without saying, the
Yeah,
fight's
if any.
practically made. The ink is dry in my mind.
Yeah, like Robert Whitaker, it was supposed to be Robert Whitaker last night or
Yeah,
2 nights ago. This comes out on Monday, but he wasn't ready, so
yeah,
Vittori took his place, and Dana White made it clear the winner gets Whitaker.
yeah,
And now that Adesanya won, if you go back to the venue, he talked about going to Auckland, going to New Zealand. I think they probably still go back to Australia if COVID
yeah.
permitting.
I
But
think
that's a huge fight,
Australia's.
especially Whitaker comes into that fight different, a lot different than the first fight. I
Mhm.
think Whitaker was a lot more compromised in the first fight than he let on
Yeah,
for a lot of different reasons, and you can just look at his medical history
yeah,
to show that he's come back strong in his last couple of fights. If Whitaker gets that one back, very much in play for him to do
yeah,
that. That trilogy fight too is something that you don't even mess around with, and you just make it again.
yeah.
Especially when you have Till and Vittori, if you
Mhm.
have, because those guys probably the only other guy that would be in the title picture, I would say, and that might be a stretch, is Brunson, just because of the run he's on.
Mhm.
Till and Vittori, you can say one win against each other is not enough. You need another one,
Yeah,
and that
and
buys you
and
enough
and,
time
and I
if
mean,
Whitaker wins to run it back.
with those personalities, that's a whole nother side story.
Hmm.
That's a whole nother shiny object. It becomes, if these guys,
Hmm.
if Vittori knows how to sell himself, and Darren Till has been around. These guys know how to sell fights. And they
Yep.
have a unique. There's something unique about Vittori now. Like there's something everybody you're the next Conor McGregor, or you're a Derek Lewis, and we love to laugh with you, or yada yada yada. There hasn't been anything exactly like Vittori in a long time, which is what made
No.
and I think Adesanya built that in a lot of ways. Adesanya gets huge credit for building that, because of
Yeah.
the eyes he brings and just the personality. I mean, like he was the perfect, almost just count. Like they were great counters to each other to build up Vittori as this, character,
Yep.
and then you get and then so back to Robert Whitaker too. What you were saying with him on the mend, so he's getting better. He's not only healing, but he's also looking forward to training to get himself higher than he ever was. Simultaneously, every once in a while, he's able to turn on the TV on a Saturday night, and he sees Adesanya just doing, I mean, the Acosta fight, the Vittori fight as the bread on the sandwich, and I mean, like, I'm not gonna go into the gory details of just some of the emotes he was doing, silly stuff like that. And then you see in between, it's like this guy tried to run up to light heavyweight, and try to catch that double champ. Meanwhile, Robert Whitaker has been thinking only about Israel Adesanya, not obsessed, but you know what I mean,
he's
like
had like
training.
3 fights.
But
I think he's had 2 or 3 fights.
yeah, but he's like, you're thinking about the belt. That's what I'm saying. Like, you're thinking about the belt. You're seeing Adesanya dance around, and
I think now he thinks about the belt, but I think part of the reason why Robert Whitaker was so dangerous is because after that he didn't think about the belt right away. I'm not saying he's not, like, I think you're right in the fact that he's thinking about it right now, but when he came back, it wasn't about I have to get back there immediately, which we see so many champions do. They lose a belt, they lose their next fight because they're so worried about getting back to the belt. Robert Whitaker just came back and said, I'm here to fight, here to do a job. I'm going to be the best I can be. And then ran through people, right?
yeah,
And like he had the war with Darren Till, which he won, and they beats Gaslam, right?
yeah,
And so you're looking at that now when he's coming for the title, he's in the right spot mentally, physically, his confidence is back. And now when he does what you say and just focuses right in on the title, he's coming at it with not a loser's perspective, going, I need to get this back. And it's time to, you know what I mean? It's time to be champ again.
And it just all goes to say that, I mean, we're gonna see something. There's gonna be some changes, I think, or there's going to be some danger for Adesanya, which is something that hasn't existed. I mean, take out Jan because that's a totally different. But middleweight wise, there's danger for Adesanya now, which is something that hasn't been present, and I think which is why one of the most valuable things, one of the things that made the jump up for him somewhat productive, was you get the taste of that danger again, because you're gonna need that if you don't know that for a while, and you can just, you're at a point where there's no fear. You're basically, I mean, Nate Diaz, to tie it to to Nate Diaz, right? The guy has no fear, right? And but his fear comes when he's taking a beating. That's a different brand of no fear. Whereas Adesanya's fearlessness and I'm talking about fear because if you're stepping into the octagon, you don't know fear very well. Or at least in that element. Compared to the normal person, there's always fear, but but if you're emoting during fights, it's a totally different level. If you drop your hands, if you spin around and twerk a little bit, if you grab something, it's a totally different brand of not fear. But for Nate Diaz, it comes when my ass is getting kicked, and then Adesanya just comes from, I'm kicking your ass. Like, we don't see that as much we didn't see it as much in the Jan fight, so to see, like, I see a guy who's kind of bored. He's bored. He's acting out, and he's the gifted kid acting out in class right now. And if that's the case, if you're gonna act out in the octagon, you're gonna act out during training camp, and the list goes on and on and on. And that's my way of taking a guy that's done so much in his division and is so dominant and finding a criticism. So call me a hater, whatever. I'm just trying to throw some intrigue into the fact that nobody can beat this guy right now.
Yep, I agree. And I think the Robert Whitaker fight is going to be super fun. I'm excited to see it. I'm a Robert Whitaker stan, so I'm going to be riding with Bobby Knuckles for that. But we have not talked about them too much. You're trying to skip over them and get to Nate Diaz. We have to talk about the new flyweight king,
I'm not trying to,
Brandon Moreno.
I'm trying to hyperlink.
Okay, but Brandon Moreno submits Davison Figueiredo round 3. People thought Brandon Moreno had a good chance based off the first fight. Last week, I was discrediting him. I was talking about how Figueiredo was going to come in better shape, healthy, and that he was going to put on a great performance. I mean, Figueiredo did not look right from the get-go.
Mm-mm.
I think that if they didn't lie, there was probably something wrong with the weight cut. He made weight with 40 seconds to go on Friday, and he looked lethargic in the
Wait,
cage.
how do you even? I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that when that happens. How do you make weight with 40 seconds
Well, you
left
didn't
to go?
date it. Well, I mean, you have a window to make weight
Yeah, you know,
for time wise.
but it doesn't, because I mean, you got people hacks on Instagram selling you, you with my program, you're gonna lose 10 pounds in 6 weeks, you know, and you're telling
I
me
mean, but
40 seconds, there's a 40-second window that you could either not make the weight or make the weight. Like,
well,
it's a
I mean,
totally
the thing
different.
is like, yeah, it's but with like the water weight and everything. So
Yeah,
and he's a huge flyweight.
yeah.
So if he was struggling to get it off, I mean, he came in at 125, so with a pound or a half pound to spare. But if he's struggling to get it off and get to that weight, that's going to affect him in the cage. And
Yeah.
so I think so it's a situation where if did that play into it, you can't discredit Brandon Moreno, because I think
Mm,
a lot of the reason still is going to be that Brandon Moreno came out there, showed that he had improved a lot, dominated him on the feet, dominated him on the ground. There wasn't an aspect where you said that Figueiredo was the better fighter. Brandon Moreno clearly went
mm,
in, put his stamp on him, finished him. I mean, finishing him was great. And how can you not like Brandon Moreno?
yeah,
How can you not, right?
yeah.
I mean, the guy crying with his baby in one arm, the belt in the other arm,
Hmm.
I think he figured out what the F word was 30 minutes before the fight, the way he was saying it in the post-fight interview.
Well, I mean, that's the reason. I mean, most people put the headphones on the baby so they don't the crowd noise. Mama put
Mm-hmm.
them on the head because it's like, oh, this man just discovered something. The baby's gonna be discovering the F word at the same time her daddy is. But
Yeah.
okay, here's some intrigue, right? Here's something I'm trying, like a riddle we have to solve. So last week
Okay.
when we were doing our preview, we were looking back at the first fight. We were saying I think one of the biggest elements was that Figueiredo just was shocked by Moreno surprised everybody. You had Figueiredo with a month-long camp going up against a guy that
Well, here's the one thing, and I don't want to interrupt you here, but
yeah, no,
the one
interrupt
thing I
me.
think we really forgot about last week, and it wasn't when I listened back to it, I went, we really didn't talk about that. Brandon Moreno was also coming off a 3-week layoff for that fight too. They fought on the same card. Because
Yeah.
remember,
Yeah,
Brandon
yeah, okay,
Moreno
so
was the
take that
first.
take
So
so scratch the 4 week or whatever. Just the element of Figueiredo being shocked by Moreno, right?
yep.
Do you think that Moreno or Figueiredo, it felt like Figueiredo was shocked by him again? I didn't think of
Yeah.
and I didn't really think about the weight cut stuff when Moreno first took him down. It wasn't a look on Figueiredo's face, and I have to pull it up again. I'm just going off my memory, but as I remember it wasn't really a face that it was just like, oh, like I have no strength to stop him or any. It was like, oh, like he's got this move now, you know.
Yeah,
And,
I think yeah, I did. I came in discrediting Moreno, immediately jumping to the weight cut issues.
mhm.
So I think there is the element of, I think you're right. I mean, it shocked him again. I don't know why it shocked him after the first fight.
Yeah,
Moreno clearly was better, but
yeah,
it shouldn't be
but
shocking.
but let's put it in a different angle, right? And you say, I mean, I don't want to pick on you, right? Like, because there's a lot of
Mhm.
people that were saying, yeah, like just there's a lot of people saying Figueiredo was going to win last week, right? Including yourself. And part of the reason
And
was,
including you too.
well, okay, yeah, so me, all right. So so we were both thinking, so we can say how is Figueiredo shocked by it, but we were kind of shocked by it. Again,
That
and
is
that's
fair.
the funny thing. You get you like the trickery here is that you have all these elements. You have shorter camp. You have a guy you haven't fought before, or it's weight cuts. It's this. The sun was shining. I ate this for breakfast, And you get all these scenarios, and it's the ecosystem of MMA. It's the ecosystem of combat sports. It's the ecosystem of all sports, right? It's the only reason why we don't say that guy beat that guy. Why would I want to see that again? It's the only reason.
Yeah, no.
And you get into your head so much, and Figueiredo did it at the top level, and we did it at the lower level. It's just the way things work, and you get a guy like Moreno who's just going to be a consistent grinder, and he just breaks that matrix.
Because the one person who never doubted Brandon Moreno was Brandon Moreno. Which is the most important thing. Here, and I think it's a situation, and he nobody in the UFC will ever doubt him again.
No,
and I mean, because what I was gonna bring this to you, and I kind of, you might see where I'm going with this, but I was gonna say, who do you think is next for Figueiredo and Moreno? And if you don't have anything off the bat, I'll give you what I think it should be. I think Figueiredo's got a decision to make here. I think it's, if he did struggle with the weight cut, I think jump to 35. But if he wants to stay at flyweight, I think you run it back.
I think
there's nobody exciting next in line. Yeah. And I hate to be like Askar Askarov, great name too, probably deserves a chance. Nobody is lining up to see Askar Askarov versus Brandon Moreno. That is a third title fight on any card where they just throw them on. Yeah. And they just go. And no disrespect to Askarov. He's a hell of a fighter. But nobody, but there, and it's people that really like the UFC don't know who he is. And because part of that is UFC's fault, where they haven't promoted him whatsoever. He's probably next in line for a title shot. Don't think he's ever been on a main card of even a fight night.
Yeah.
Somebody might fact check me on that, but I think that's true. So I think, and this was exciting enough where people had enough intrigue into it after the first fight. After the second, too, with Moreno taking the belt, run it back.
Yeah. Well, and I think two options, right? The one is, as you said, I mean, you move Figueiredo up. You say, obviously, this weight cut is impacting you. And you got to say, you got a star in Figueiredo. The Figueiredo, and Moreno plays into this, but Figueiredo managed a way, somehow was able to become a marquee star at 125. You bring him up 10 pounds. The difference 10 pounds makes right now is huge. The bantamweight division is one of the most intriguing, young, active, and fun divisions that the UFC has to offer right now. You throw him into the mix, gets crazy, right? It gets nuts. Yeah. But
because we can't forget too that Figueiredo was the big game talk fighter of the year last year.
Yes, he was the big game talk fighter of the year. So, but then the problem is you make a wasteland out of the 125 division. You're cannibalizing the division to bring it up. So, and then you leave Moreno, who's has the potential to be a very interesting star to kind of carry on Figueiredo with nobody. You gotta have a buffer. If we're going to say win, lose, or draw in a third fight, Figueiredo's moving up and Moreno is effectively taking over the division. I think that's the only outcome out of a trilogy at this point in Figueiredo's career.
I think that Figueiredo and Moreno, how they've kind of captured people's attentions, and it's not the casuals, they're capturing the mainstream. They're just prolonging the life of the flyweight division. At some point in the maybe distant future at this point, not long ago, we thought it was not too distant future, the flyweights are going to fold. There's not a lot of them on the roster.
Yeah.
Not many of them are exciting. It's when people like Figueiredo and Moreno come out of nowhere, shock people and go, oh, I want to see that guy fight. Dana goes, all right, let's keep that division going.
So
it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
So let's. Oh, sorry, you're going into an interesting.
No, I was just gonna say it's the same thing with the featherweight division for the women's with Amanda Nunes. Yeah. As soon as she stops holding the belt, there's nobody interesting left, and they're gonna cut the division. The only reason why it keeps going is because somebody interesting is there.
Yeah.
So as soon as that stops, and all you have to do is, if they were investing in it, they'd have more people on the roster.
Yeah.
Look how many bantamweights are on the roster. Look how many flyweights are on the roster.
Yeah.
There's your answer.
So here's what you do, right? There's 3 options. Okay, well, let's say in the case of a trilogy, I think the trilogy is the way to go. Let's say the trilogy is made. Going out during the time between now, the announcement of the trilogy happening, and then the brief period where it's in the limelight, and then people move on. In that time period, you have to do 3 things. 1, you either say, we're going out with a bang, let's fold. Which is, it sucks for Moreno, but sometimes it's what happens. 2, you got to find you got to go back to the drawing board, and you really got to reinvent the wheel in this division to try. So then you got to reinvent the wheel, and you have to, try to make an overnight star out of some of those people in the rankings. And then the third option is just like, you got to start poaching fighters from somewhere else. You got to bring somebody in. You got to take, and it's just.
I agree. You know what I think you do? And they've tried this before and it didn't really work, but I think it's worth a shot again. Do an all flyweight season, The Ultimate Fighter. Just bring in all of the options. They did that a long time ago. They brought in, for Demetrius Johnson, they brought in flyweight champions from all of these like kind of mid-tier organizations, and they over the course of the season, the winner got the title shot.
Yeah.
Do something like that. Just bring in, and then bring in the most entertaining people.
Yeah.
So you get people invested in those fighters, because like we've seen with people like Nate Diaz, it doesn't even matter if they're winning fights. You have to just be interested in the person.
Yeah.
And me and you are really into UFC. I would bet that either one of us would struggle to name 5 flyweights on the 100%.
Roster. I would admit that right now.
And we could probably run through the top 15 rankings for almost every other weight division.
Yeah.
And that's not on us. That's on the UFC for partially their poor marketing.
It's the public education system in Canada.
They don't push the flyweights. You got to push them if you want to keep them.
So that's a great idea with Ultimate Fighter, right? And this is why I'm about to make this an even better idea. Okay, it was 6 months between that fight. But you put another 6 months. We're at Christmas time. You roll back to the trilogy on near the anniversary of the first fight. So then the whole thing is drawn out, but it's taking place within a calendar year. So it's focused. We can remember in our minds. It's not like we're going back. I mean, Conor Poirier, we're remembering back. You don't have to remember back. You like, this is all you've been seeing from these guys, and you want to see the shocking conclusion, right? The rubber match. Yep. And then you've got 4 months, or really, I mean, shooting for the Ultimate Fighter probably starts around then, right? At the start of the new year. Does. So, and then promotion
you could start it really almost any.
You could start at any time. But I mean, if you start it before then and you have a promo, you announce it the night of that fight. You say, this summer we're bringing in a bunch of flyweights, and it's pretty much, let's like remake this division. While Moreno just kind of, it's and no disrespect to Moreno, but it's kind of almost an element of, hey, Moreno, distract them, like do a funny dance while we like sort this out in the background, and that's, I mean, it sucks to be Moreno right now, who's working his ass off and should be respected just as much as anybody who takes a belt in the UFC, but it's just not. It's just not, or it is right now. That's what it is right now. But in 6 months, it's a different story, and that's just the division. And that's, I mean, the UFC, I don't want to say that they've kind of been letting it slide or it's like they've been like, they've dwindled something. It's kind of, where are you going to put your resources? Where is the money? Where are you going to put your resources? And
it's very
I think
understandable, yeah.
But I think the fact that you have not only a potential fight of the year last year occur, the last fight going into the new year, with come out of nowhere, and then you have a shocking upset come out of nowhere out of that same matchup, with a hallmark. I mean, it would be a hallmark moment if there wasn't so many F-bombs of him getting the belt. I think it almost makes Dana White rethink a lot of things and say, you know what, maybe we need to step back and think about the bantamweight division. It's the same. It's the same situation with the bantamweight division. I mean, it's never been in as dire straits as the flyweights have been, but Dana White has kicked a lot of young, because that's a division that's stacked, but it's young. I mean, it's young, it's fresh, and the guy, there's a newness to it, And I think that just doesn't come out of nowhere. I mean, that's been set up that way very recently, So it's definitely possible.
If you put work into something, it can pay dividends for sure. And what we got to talk about next, though, which you teased before, is Leon Edwards beat Nate Diaz. We talk a lot about Nate Diaz. We're disrespecting Leon Edwards here. He put on, aside from the last minute, a very dominant 5-round victory over Nate Diaz.
Yeah.
Let's make it clear. Leon Edwards clearly beat Nate Diaz start to finish, except for the last minute, where it almost
but you don't
had
even
that
have to
movie,
say you don't even have to say the except for because I'm like, you could have given Leon Edwards the round.
No, you did get it, didn't
he?
you?
He did get the round. So
yeah, it's a situation.
I don't know why we need a caveat of the last, and it's. Anyways, sorry.
Well, it's because Edwards almost had the George Masvidal where he touched his ear to his shoulder, damn near.
Yeah.
So he got rocked. We almost had the movie moment where the spunky guy that everybody loves is getting his ass kicked for the entire fight and comes back and throws a Hail Mary knockout. And I mean, people are going to chirp with the Nate Diaz pointing. You had a very high level take on the why he did the point.
You want me to, okay, so Nate Diaz, everybody's saying, oh, he finished it. He chose not to finish it. He pointed at him instead. He wanted to look cool, and he wanted to give Leon Edwards the chance. He knew he didn't want the belt. He was done. He didn't want to fight anymore, but he didn't want to hurt Leon Edwards' chances, dude. He didn't want to hurt his chances, so he just pointed at him to let him know, I could end you right here, but I'm not going to. This is a take that not only disrespects Nate Diaz's ability, it disrespects Leon Edwards. It disrespects the sport of mixed martial arts. It goes back to the schoolyard, I let you win. Who likes a kid that says, I let you win? Who likes that? And are you going to ascribe those words or those thoughts or that process to Nate Diaz? That's disrespect. And these are all the Nate Diaz fans. That diminishes the lore of Nate Diaz if you believe that. So this is what really happens. So his leg is messed up, and when your leg, if you get enough hits right here, all of a sudden your leg is not. It's whatever you tell the leg to do. It's a 50-50 shot. So Diaz lands that first punch, and his right leg sweeps over. You can watch it happen. It sweeps over. Now all of a sudden his legs are crossed. He has two options. He could try and go for the finish with his legs crossed, which is like trying to be Usain Bolt with your shoelaces tied together. Stand up at home, cross your legs like Nate Diaz's legs were, and try to throw a knockout power punch to the right side, away from your body.
Stand up, Chris? Are you telling me to stand up, Chris?
No, I'm telling the viewers. All right, I'm telling the viewers.
Okay.
We don't want to see it. We don't want to see it. But try to do that and be so. Nate Diaz, his other option is to fade into it, go with the flow, kick out his left foot away, so it looks like he's walking away. And then what is Nate Diaz going to do? He's not going to make it look like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. No, he's going to point at him and be like, I meant to do that the whole time, man. That's Nate Diaz. And that's exactly what happened. And people are saying, oh, he could have knocked him out. Oh, he could have. Come on. That's just, I couldn't believe those takes. What do you think, Brad?
I think for the UFC, this fight, I mean, Nate Diaz doesn't come out of this. I think you get Leon Edwards. He cements his place in the welterweight division. The last minute after the first 4 rounds is exactly what the UFC needs, because they're going to make Usman Covington too. That last minute is enough for them to say Edwards isn't ready for Usman. You got to have somebody else, which is, I mean, not like he deserves Usman, but Covington, that fight needs to happen first. And for Diaz, you can't. Nobody's going to come and say he's washed because he almost ended the fight.
Yeah.
And you can still put him in a big fight, even coming off of. He's won one of his last four, one of his last four, but he's still going to get big fights. So what I would say to you then is, who do you match up Edwards with, and who do you match up Diaz with? And if you disagree with me for the Usman thing, like, do you make that fight? But who would you do?
I think that it's tough, right? Because with the welterweight division, I think there's so much. There's so much that can change if Covington fights Usman. There's so much, because I don't know what the matchup is. Usman, I don't know, because Usman, if he beats Covington, I mean that is a huge hurdle that Usman, like, that's one of the last hurdles that Usman really has to get over. Still,
I mean, he's already beat him.
He already beat him, but still, I mean, in terms of the discussion of who can beat him right now, in the context of today's UFC, it's a different conversation than anybody else that, like, Masvidal. No, I mean, that was just a going through the talking about that fight before the fight, the way the odds were. Gilbert Burns was kind of interesting, but Colby Covington is, in the minds of the odds makers and the fans, probably the most likely person to beat Usman in the last short while. So
yeah, I agree.
So if Covington loses, to try and sell a Leon Edwards fight against Usman becomes hard. But then there's also the added benefit for Leon Edwards of who else, and then if you have Covington
and Leon Edwards. Also, Leon Edwards hasn't lost a fight since 2015, which was to Usman. And they're very different fighters from then. So you can't point at that and say that's why he doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
Edwards has worked his way to the top. He just doesn't have the mainstream appeal for people to be like, yeah, that's the fight I want.
And what I would say, like, that was just, but the big thing is Leon Edwards gained a lot of mainstream appeal fighting Nate Diaz. I mean, that's part of the genius of this, of what just happened last night. Or 2 nights ago, once this goes up. So
you know how you get Leon Edwards even more mainstream appeal, and you give Edwards the fight that he would very much say yes to, even though it's not a title fight and is a very winnable fight for him? George Masvidal.
Yeah, that's a
fight that ever since Masvidal gave him the whole 3-piece in the soda in the back in England, that's a fight that's needed to happen. That's a fight that Leon Edwards wants to put a beating on because of that still.
Yeah.
That's a fight that he's going to say yes to, even though it's not a title shot. That's one that gives him another big name, and that you can market when he fights if he gets the fight.
I mean, Leon Edwards is in a good spot in this division now, because you have, I think, three elements. I mean, one, you beat Nate Diaz. That's going to do you a lot of favors. I don't care when you do it or how you do it or whatever. That's going to... Second, I mean, this week he called out Usman a bit, and he was saying, Usman's in love with his hands. Usman is, which is kind of, I mean, I would keep that close to the chest if you're talking about, but it's kind of a mind game right there. If you get advice from a guy saying like, hey, watch out, buddy, like, you got to work on this. Like, I don't even, like, it's going to be a long time till we fight, if we ever fight. And I'm going to give you, it's not like the week of, I'm going to say like, oh, I've noticed this flaw in your game,
Yeah.
But it's an interesting, and some people criticize the strategy, some people love it, but it's interesting for putting yourself, now instantly you're correlating, if you've never heard of Leon Edwards and you're just like, wow, this guy's going to fight Nate Diaz, you're putting in your mind not only Nate Diaz, Leon Edwards, but you're putting in your mind Usman, Leon Edwards, right? That does you a lot of favors. I mean, and then, as you said, I was even thinking, I've to be fair, I've put Masvidal on a shelf a little bit. I've put him on a shelf. But I mean, that's a great use for Masvidal right there. And a nice, you with Masvidal, you never know. There's redemption there. He's a dynamic guy. He's a very he's every different time we see Masvidal, it's a little bit different Masvidal. And when you have a fighter like that, they can surprise you. So I think that's an interesting next.
And
next
you
move.
capture that last little bit of media hype from Masvidal as well. And in terms of Nate Diaz, who he fights next, for me, I thought about this a lot, and there's a lot of different names that you can throw out there, but I think it comes down to, for me, it has to be the loser of McGregor versus Poirier. I think the winner gets Oliveira at lightweight. The loser, go ahead and move up to welterweight. They both fill out nice for it. And give yourself a fat paycheck fighting Nate Diaz. You get Conor Nate Part 3, which is a fight that has to happen. Or you get Dustin Nate, a fight that, again, we were promised in the past that never happened and is very easy to sell.
No, and I mean,
Dustin's talked about moving up to 70
I will say, you give a lot more respect to Nate Diaz that I probably should be giving, because I was going to throw in Tony Ferguson into that.
No, I don't. That's a fun fight.
It would be content.
It's a very.
It would be content. It'd be
Yeah,
content.
you can
There'd be
convince
so
me
much
that
blood. You could make that 10 rounds. You could make that a 10-round fight.
You really could. The difference is Tony versus Nate is a pay-per-view co-main, and then Dustin versus Nate or Conor versus Nate is a pay-per-view main event.
Yeah,
that's your difference.
And it's also like Nate Ferguson is, you're cashing out. You're putting you're cashing your chips in. You're done at the table.
And at that point too is, it's almost like the Conor Nate. I like it because you have to have that fight. The Dustin Nate, if Dustin loses to McGregor, it pops Dustin back up. Nate or Tony, whoever wins that fight doesn't really. It's just kind of it doesn't really benefit from it. You know what I mean? It's a fun fight. I would pay to watch it tomorrow if they made it.
Yeah.
But for the UFC, it doesn't make a lot of sense because it really is Tony, who's clearly on his way out, and Nate, who is really here to just have really fun fights. Yeah. Which I guess you could say that is.
You could say that is. I mean, I think it all comes down to how much does Nate want to fight, and how often. Because he's gonna.
And what is his goals for the fights?
I don't think it's a matter of him retiring. Because I don't think I think he said explicitly, I'm not gonna retire. Like, I'll just.
He said he wants to come back in 3 to 4 months.
He wants to come back. Oh, I didn't catch that. So, okay, that's a different story then. Now we're treating him like this is a guy on the roster, not just the substitute teacher that everybody loves. He's actually, and that makes it interesting. I mean, that's where you can almost say, let's give him Tony, and then when he goes up to fight Conor or Poirier, he's going in potentially with a win.
I like that. I like that, and
because
I like that.
You don't and you're not going to say, there's nobody going to be saying, oh, that win was against Tony Ferguson, because no one's going to say, oh, he's lost against Leon Edwards, or wins and losses don't matter with Nate Diaz. And if Tony Ferguson at this point, wins and matters don't like, no. Put it as a, because
he's not working his way back.
Put it as a nice 5-round co-main on something, on anything that just heightens everything. That is fun, exciting. You get to see, who's going to get hurt more, and who's it's going to become a dance off for all we know, with all the emotes that are going to be happening, so so you get that, and then boom, at that same time, whoever wins, Ferguson, it's a different story, but let's say Nate Diaz wins and he's calling out, he's like, whoever doesn't get the belt, you get me. Says something like that, something casual like that. Nate Diaz, like just a Nate Diaz. He turns that into a Nate Diazism. I think the secret for the UFC now, and I think they discovered it with Conor Poirier, is that it's not only about can we have an interesting title fight, or like a build up to a title fight, or a next title fight. Can we also have in the top 5 of the division an interesting storyline that's running parallel? Because you got guys that want belts and you want guys that want money, and that's fine. That is fine. You have to embrace that.
Yeah,
because that's how you get, and when you're willing to say, okay, we're going to make this fight that's not a main event or a title fight, we're going to make it 5 rounds. When you bring in Nate Diaz and you just say like he's fighting Leon Edwards, like what? You create these side when you have more like all this crazy stuff going on. I had another example, it left me. But
well, I mean, if you're running out of examples, that might be a good time to point out to you, Chris, that we are 20 plus minutes past when we planned on ending.
Yeah. Well, you could have said it. I mean, I didn't say anything. You didn't say anything. We knew what was happening, but we were feeling it tonight.
So, with that being said, though, thank you for tuning in to the 11th Island. That's Chris over there. I'm Brad. Like I said at the top, catch us every Monday. The occasional Thursdays, catch you this Thursday. We will have more content up. And again, we're coming at you with UFC stuff. We're going to start branching out into other sports as well. Lean away from just the recaps and the previews and everything. We're going to go into kind of deep dives into some other stuff. So you'll see. Just stay tuned. Like, subscribe. Follow us on the podcast platforms where you listen to your podcasts. And catch us on Instagram, 11th Island. And we'll see you next week.
See ya.